People who are free get to choose what they want. Yes, they do. But that does not mean that they aren't following a model. When we talk about desire in the heart of a particular subject, or the desirability inherent to a specific object, we need those scare quotes because both desire and desirability emanate from a third party, a model. It's commonplace in some circles to use the term mediation to describe what these models of desire do to us and to our world, but don't let that terminology confuse your understanding of origins. Mediators, as I'll be using the term, are not simply go-betweens that show up after the facts of becoming. They don't find autonomous subjects and pre-existing objects just lying around and then start looking for ways to connect them. Just the opposite. Mediators are precisely what give birth to subjectivity. And as for subjects and their subjectivity, so also for objects and their objectivity. Anything perceived by a subject belongs to a category that has already been of interest to that subject's mediator. So, unlike what might get conveyed in the everyday use of the term mediators, necessarily come first. As for subjects and objects, I think they could come in either order. A story of conflict might begin with a mediator and a handful of objects, all of which precede the subject. In their wake, a nascent sense of self grows stronger, gets to feeling his oats, and decides to exercise this newfound vigor over and against, you guessed it, the very model who's been mediating him into existence. In this account of rivalry, each of the objects are fully concretized as things in the world before the arrival of the subject. But what of those occasions wherein a subject precedes certain objects? Well, it could be an account of someone who is creative. Imagine someone operating peacefully within a perimeter of desire conferred upon her through mimesis. This subject makes new things. She's not making any of them for the express purpose of pleasing her mediator, but she does know her mediator's likes and dislikes well. Upon completion of a work, one such artisan might stop and recollect on her mediator, acknowledge the influence over her, and say, "Yeah, I think my teacher would like this one. But even if she doesn't, I can say for certain that this thing would not exist but for her and her influence on me." So while there's flexibility in the priority given to subjects and objects, the precedence of mediators is fixed. And this is relevant to understanding the freedom of subjects with respect to their mediators and with respect to objects in the world. You see, there's a long history of rewarding conversations that delineate between freedom to and freedom from. And then there are those infernal triangles. Cage stage Gerardians, like myself, keep shoving in everyone's faces saying, "See, the triangle explains all of human nature." I'm going to try and stay in my cage, avoid too many sweeping generalities. I mean, I'll need a few more, but just enough to trace out an overlap. You see, as subjects, we have agency. We choose things and perhaps even create things in the very act of choosing. But when this happens, the things we are free to choose and or create can only be objects. On the other hand, mediators are not objects. They cannot be created by the subjects they mediate, nor can they be chosen. I mean, if you think you have, of your own accord, taken up a new mediator to be a conduit between you and certain aspects of the world, with all due respect, you might be mistaken. Let's just think it through in the abstract. If you picked it out, then you were engaging in acquisition. And the object of an acquisition is an object, a thing you choose under the direction of desires mediated to you by some other. And it's this other that is your mediator, not any of the things you picked out. And if you're thinking, preposterous, there was no one else there telling me who to pick when I picked out my model, be cautious. Mediators are notorious for passing fey like unseen, especially when it's one of our own. Is that to say that we cannot turn our gaze directly to our mediators, that we won't ever see them clearly? No, I believe we can. It's just that when we do see a mediator as our mediator, we will do so only because the mediator has already brought desire upon us, desire which now resides within us, desire that makes us who we are. Otherwise, if that weren't the case, that thing we are seeing wouldn't be our mediator. It would just be a thing. And so, while we're free to choose, take up, and perhaps even create objects of our own making, we can only ever receive mediation. In other words, our subjectivity is a gift. Oh, put it that way, it sounds great. But unravel the knotted ball of implications dragging along behind it, it looks bonkers. And it's dismal, too. Dismal and bonkers? Am I really suggesting that we are eternally constrained by our models, imprisoned to only desire those things they have dictated to us as worthy of being worthwhile? I mean, it's not exactly like that. It's exactly like that. But the point I'm trying to make is that even so, there is still freedom for subjects. Even though their subjectivities are entirely the product of one mimetic hierarchy or another, there is still freedom. It's just that that freedom, apropos mediators, is limited to rejection. Think of that famous scene from When Harry Met Sally, when she pretends to have an orgasm in the middle of a crowded diner and a patron at the other table says to her server, "I'll have what she's having." That patron is choosing an item from the menu, an object. She's not choosing her mediator. Meg Ryan's character's performance imposed itself upon that woman at the other table, and this imposition created for her an avenue of choice she's now free to take up. And it's funny, in part because it exposes truth. Desirability is not at all inherent in objects. It couldn't possibly be the case here because she wants a very specific thing from the menu even before she has any idea what that thing might be. Now imagine someone a bit more prudish, who, to say the least, would be nonplussed by public displays of orgasm sounds. This person scans the menu thinking, I don't really care what I have, but I know I don't want what she wants. What is she eating? Okay, even if this hypothetical character literally crosses out an item on the menu, this is not the rejection of an object. It is a rejection of the potential that someone like Sally could in any way, shape, or form ever become my model. In summation, I think our agency, our freedom too, our capacity for selecting the stuff we want is directed toward objects and objects only. But our models are forces which act upon us. We accept them as for us. I'll have what she's having. Or we reject them as contrary to what we would ever become. And I believe these two things are true on account of a hierarchy inherent to human being, not the kind of thing we can will ourselves into overcoming. And so I'm led to the following disjunctive conclusion. Either we choose our models by accepting their arrival as beneficent, or we don't choose our models.